Hey everybody, Martin here with Path Followed. Today we're doing our how-to series, and what we're going to be talking about is problems at work. We're going to make this kind of short and simple. We'll get right into it. When you're at work and you're dealing with some problems, right? You've hit a wall and maybe things are no longer going as planned. We're going to talk about some things you should do as we go through this is an approach you take if you really want to start to take the lead and show maybe more initiative or responsibility at work. Here's some simple things you can do. It doesn't cover everything, but it'll definitely help you as you start to address problems at work. So the first thing you need to really do when dealing with some issues at work or trying to get a project back on track is you need to find some support. Basically, you need to find others who want to also solve the problem. And we'll get into that in a little bit more here in a second. The second thing you really want to do is you got to make sure you understand the solution. I can't tell you how many times in my career I thought we were solving one problem, and it turns out, once we uncovered things, there was more problems, and we were even setting off to solve the wrong thing. And so it's important to do that. Make sure you understand what you're really trying to solve. And the last thing I really want to kind of emphasize is there are no shortcuts. So those are the three things that we'll talk about. We'll get into those. Let's get into the first one, right? I said you need to find supporters, right? You cannot do it alone. And what I mean by you cannot do it alone for several reasons. The first is you need other points of view. And so when you look for supporters, don't find people who just agree with you. You want people who don't agree with you. That's how you're going to find individuals who are really going to help you solve the problem. Because if it's a problem, that means if there's not a simple, well, maybe there's a simple solution, but you might need different points of view to then try to resolve that. So make sure you seek out people who don't necessarily think like you, but have the same goal as you. And so that's the key here. So you don't want to be, bringing people in who are maybe too negative or just like, that can't be fixed. You want people who also take initiative, who are really willing to jump in and take on a little bit more responsibility and try to figure out how to solve the problem and get the project or the program or whatever the situation is back on track. Okay. Next thing that we want to talk about is we want to talk about the problem to the solution. Okay. This one gets a little tricky because you have to define the problem, meaning you have to start asking a lot of different questions, right? Like, what happened? What was the cause? Who was involved? And this is where having those other points of view and those other people involved are really going to help. Because again, you're going to see it from one point of view or one situation or one aspect, and others may see it totally different. And so it's really important to have those people come alongside and start really trying to define the problem here. Okay, that ties us into these different points of view, right? As I just mentioned, you're going to ask those other people, you're going to say, hey, how did they feel about it? What are they thinking? Once you have the different points of view, and once you've talked this through, you need to then start putting together possible solutions. So have a brainstorming session, again, with these individuals who are trying to solve the same goal. And then you need to generate these ideas. It's very important to vet the ideas. You can't just jot everything down and try everything. No, you need to start saying, okay, that's out. That wouldn't work. Or, we don't have the resources maybe at this point for that. Maybe that's on the short list to take a look at next time or whatever the case may be. And then the last thing I want to emphasize is you have to choose. You have to choose something. You have to have some sort of action that you're going to take to try to address the problem. So those are the things you do when trying to identify that. Now, let's move over next to no shortcuts. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are no shortcuts when solving problems. The first thing you have to do is you have to realize yourself that it may take some time. To do things right, it usually takes some time. It's going to take some time to find those supporters. It's going to take some time to identify who has different points of view. It's going to take some time to bring them all together, to have that brainstorming session, to talk through possible solutions. We could be talking about multiple meetings here. So there's a lot to go through. Understand it's going to take time. Okay? Next thing is you have to be transparent about the whole thing. when dealing with problems at work, if you have people who are higher up, executive, directors, CEO, whoever it is, they're going to want to know, hey, how are we dealing with the issue? Are we on track? How's it going? You have to be transparent, meaning how long it's going to take. Provide those regular status updates. Hey, here's where we're at. We had a first meeting. We identified the people who are going to come in and help out. We identified some possible solutions. We have a list. We'll run the list by you. You cannot over communicate in this area. Make sure you do that. That's the approach part I just covered. Lastly, you want to make sure you're conveying the reason why you're doing all of this is because you're trying to help. Maybe you're jumping in and taking the lead on this whole thing, and it's not even your problem to really deal with, but you're showing that initiative. You care. Or you're trying to help out a particular department or team because you know those individuals. Whatever the case is, let them know you're trying to help. It's super important, and obviously people value that. And so I'm going to leave you with a quote, and this is from George Washington. I try to remember this when I'm dealing with problems at work because, again, it's easy to get off track, and it's easy to get off track fast if you're naturally somebody who takes initiative. And so what George Washington had here is he said, listen, learn, help, then lead. Everything we just covered, believe it or not, if you start doing those things at work to try to solve problems, you're leading. And you're leading when it matters most, when dealing with problems. And so hopefully this was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe or hit that like button so you can stay on the path followed. Until next time.